Last night, the Yankees hit a 3-run homer. Juan Soto did in the 10th, and it was awesome. October baseball is cold. Every inning counts. No one sits down. What a time to be alive. If you are a baseball fan, then you know, just like me, there is something spiritual taking place. I just lost half of you in the room. But it is. The strategy that it takes to play the game, the luck, and honestly, there's so much luck. The commitment, the skill level. Baseball requires so much precision and thought and mental and physical work. And then there's more luck, so much luck, which makes baseball incredible. There's so much that goes into the game at an individual level. And this is not luck. You have to become so skilled, so detailed as an individual player that you have to work on these skills for, honestly, decades. And that's only half the battle. You also have to play well with one another. One person does not win or lose a game. One person does not make up an entire baseball team. Juan Soto hitting a 3-run homer last night did not happen on his own. It may feel like he won the game, but that's not true. The other teammates had to get him into position to make that moment happen. The coaches had to get the players to that position in order for that moment to happen. And that's what's amazing about sports. It takes all the players, all the coaches, even the wider organization working together, building trust. Actually, trust might be the most important intangible for any sport, for any game, working together on a team. Now, you may be excellent at what you do. For baseball, you may be excellent at catching or throwing, but you have to trust who it is you're throwing the ball to that they'll catch it. Because at some point, something happens beyond your control. You have to trust that the person throwing to you is going to make an accurate throw, that they know what they're supposed to do. There is a shared commitment that goes beyond your ability to control. And it happens in every play. Now, some things you can do on your own, but the best teams know how to play together. And I know what I'm about to say is going to sound cheesy, but go with me on this. Church, who we are as a collective community that worships and serves the Lord together, we are like a baseball team. And for those who hate sports, you are gone. You are making your shopping list. I get it. Just hang on. I think it's pretty good. Our individual faith, your personal salvation, this is the time that you put in, and it's really just you. You're the one who practices, puts in the effort. You learn the skills of what it means to have a spiritual life, and that individual preparation matters. But you don't play this game. You don't play in life alone. And we don't play the game well if we don't learn to train with one another. Our individual choosing to participate, it matters in the game of faith. But how we play with others, that matters just as much. And you have to practice. Are we talking about baseball or are we talking about church? The answer to that is yes. In both, you have to practice. You have to work at getting better. You have to learn to pray more and better. You have to learn to worship more and better. You have to learn to study theology more, and you have to get better at it. But your individual preparation is only half the battle. We can't play baseball by ourselves. Spirituality is not just about bettering your own abilities so you can stand before God when you die. we also have to work out, and this is a huge Christian claim, you have to work out and practice alongside God. I don't think people realize this enough. God is one of the players on the team. Now, I would say God is the player coach, but you actually get to decide if you want God as your coach. And God, by the way, shows up early to practice. He's dressed, ready to play catch. He's ready to loosen up his arm and to strengthen what you've got going on and to give you more confidence in your ability. As a matter of fact, God loves a divine game of catch. And I know some of you know this. In baseball, when you first get to practice, you loosen up your arm. There's 1,000 ways that you could get hurt, especially your arm in baseball. And you have to strengthen it in the weight room, but also just playing catch out on the field. And I think God lives for that moment where it is you and God playing catch. I've used this metaphor before, and I probably will use it the rest of my life. So you just need to settle in with it and hear it again. We engage God in a divine game of catch. Sometimes we throw something at God, trusting that God will be there to catch it. And it can be all kinds of things. We can throw our worry, our pain, our sadness, our fear. It can even be our hopes and our dreams and our well wishes for one another. We throw all kinds of things at God, trusting that God will receive it in love. And here's the thing, God does. Every time. God always receives. And hear me say this, because we don't do a good job as a society, we don't do a good job as a church to emphasize this point enough. God always catches what we throw. And God always throws back to us love. No exceptions. What God comes to us as, what God throws in our direction, is always love. You can throw worries to God. God will catch it and will throw back to you love. You can confess your sins to God and throw that at God, and God will catch it and throw back to you forgiveness in the form of love. God is always receiving and throwing out of love. Sometimes we choose not to receive what God throws us, though, and we just let it go by. And that's on us. In baseball, it is your responsibility to put a glove on it. You are responsible for catching the ball when it comes your way. Baseball gets dangerous otherwise. In baseball, you have to trust that the person throwing you the ball knows what they're doing, and vice versa. So up to this point, we've been talking about God and trusting and throwing back and forth with God. But you need to hold another thing about this whole metaphor. God is not the only other person on the field. God is a member on the field. There are others of us playing too. We don't just play the game of life with God alone. Spirituality is also participating in community, in relationship with one another, because we're all on the same team. I think we often forget this. We're all on the same team. When it comes to spirituality and faith, we are all on the same team. And our sermon series this month is about being salt and light to one another, to our teammates. To keep this baseball metaphor going, it means that we have to be good teammates. It means showing up for one another. It means reconciling when there is an error that's been made, forgiving one another when they mess up, seeking forgiveness when you mess up. So in college, during practice, we played this terrible game. It's the worst game ever. We called it 27 outs. And when we always had a printout of what practice was going to look like. And when we saw 27 outs on there, I mean, you just feel it in your gut. We're going to be here a while. So here's how you play the game. The coach hits 27 balls in a row, and you have to field them perfectly. If one person makes an error, everyone drops their gloves and has to sprint to the furthest point from where they're standing on the field and back. And then you start back over at 0 outs. Practice usually would end about 5:30, but some days we were there past 7 because we couldn't get 27 straight outs without somebody making an error. And when one person makes an error, especially when you're like at 22 outs and then one person makes an error and the whole team is penalized for it and you're forced to start over, it is utterly demoralizing. You can feel the collective energy on the team get tense. Everyone starts to do a little worse. You start yelling at one another and bickering at one another, and you even begin hating one another. The anger in you rises. And when this happens, you've severed all trust. Everyone's tense. And then there's just a comedy of errors that unfolds. If you can live in a way when the errors happen and you don't sever trust with the people you love and do life with, if you can practice in a way that doesn't hate the other people on the team, but rather at their moment of lowest of lows, or maybe yours, you can find it in you to lift one another up, forgiving the other for their wrongdoing, seeking forgiveness when it's your wrongdoing, then it changes the collective energy on the field. It changes the whole makeup of the team. And this is why team captains are so important. It's their job to be that salt and light, to keep the energy up, to make the moment positive when it's not for anybody. They own their own mistakes and they work harder the next time, and that becomes contagious. They even encourage you when you're down. The same must be true for the spiritual life. We're not talking about baseball anymore. I hope you feel that. Our text this morning is straight from Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. He's helping everyone attempt to live together as salt and light. Or, to keep our metaphor going, to be a good teammate. Listen to his words again in verse 21. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder. Whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. Okay, that's a lot. That's also very cruel. And if you're thinking, I thought, Barrett, you said that God throws to us divine love only. That's a good point. It's a good argument. Hold on. I will tell you that Jesus is not above using hyperbole, especially when you're talking to a crowd. It's effective. And every New Testament scholar that I have read confirms that in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus consistently will use hyperbole to get the attention of the audience. You have heard that it said. That's what we hear Jesus say. That this is the way the game was supposed to be played. That this is all you have to do. You've heard that it said, don't break the law and you will be fine. But I say to you, it's not that simple. It's not just about you doing what you need to do at an individual level and everything's going to work out fine for you. Life is not just about how often or well you get a hit or catch a fly ball or do your job. Life is not just about how well that you pray individually or how often you show up to worship by yourself. Life, like baseball, has an individual component, sure. But equally as important to that is the team component. is the way in which we engage with one another. Verse 23. So when you're offering your gift to the altar, that's individual. If you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, this is the team. Leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, then come offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you've paid the last penny. I think Jesus is laying it out that we have a team component that we have to wrestle with in our spiritual life. Your relationship to one another, it matters. How good of a teammate you are matters. The people around you are very much a part of your concern because we're on the same team. The families around you are connected to you because they're on the same team. We have to be people who learn to forgive one another. We have to be humble enough to seek forgiveness. Otherwise, we're the ones bringing the negative energy into the field. And Jesus is saying people are going to make errors. Despite your attempts at making sure everything's perfect and everything is controlled and you're the one who has the control to make sure nothing goes wrong, good luck with that. Errors are going to happen. It's part of the game. You can't control what happens to others and what others do. It's part of the game. Errors take place. Now, what you can control is your response to the situation. You can fall apart. You can isolate. You can blame others. You can make sure you're not the one that others blame. You can pretend that you're better than and more important than the people that make errors. Sure, you can do all that. You can make it difficult for people to be around you. You can make it difficult to be anyone that helps others solve anything. But none of us are perfect. And you are not without fault, especially in baseball and especially in life. None of us are without sin. We all fail. And we all need reconciliation. The good teams reconcile. They pick each other up. They forgive each other. I think it takes someone who's emotionally aware to do this very well. I think it takes someone who has practiced out on the field a lot with God to carry the ability to forgive their teammates or seek forgiveness when they've failed. But that is 100% the goal. But I think sadly most people hear this gospel message more as a threat. I think individually we have not cultivated our individual spirituality well enough. What we hear Jesus say is, if I make an error, everyone is going to hate me. When I make an error, everyone will judge me. I live in fear of how others will think of me because I know I will make an error. And God will rebuke me and never throw the ball at me and then sit me on the bench and I'll never get to participate in the game again. That is how a lot of us feel and interpret our relationship with God. We think God says to us, if you don't get it right, I will punish you. I just don't believe that's true. God is in the game with us, playing with us, encouraging alongside of us. Too many people think how we play the game of life is how we get an audience before God. But that's just not right. We worship a God who comes to us. We even name him Emmanuel, God with us. God is not waiting for the game to be over to talk to you. God is participating in it with you. God is already here on the field, on the team, working with us, throwing the ball alongside of us, and it is always coming to us in love. We have to learn to throw the same ball to one another. That's what it means to be salt and light. Reconciliation is the ability to truly throw love around the field, even when others have made errors or even hurt you. You have to learn to see the bigger picture. Reconciliation understands that errors are going to occur, which, by the way, nobody cares that you are salt and light when the game is going well. It matters most when the game is not going well. When errors occur, that's when we need you to be salt and light. How you respond is how much salt and light you have. Errors are going to occur, but the game is not over. We now have to pick each other up. As Christians, we have to be willing to reconcile with one another. And what we're really talking about here is not to get angry with one another. To be salt and light to others, we have to learn to forgive them. And when we learn that, the game gets a whole lot more fun.